Maybe we could try again later, he asked. How much later? She replied, her tone tinged with impatience. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Half an hour later? An hour? Or maybe tomorrow night. No matter how long, he feared it wouldn't make a difference. This wasn't something he could control. Trying to appease her, he pulled up the sheet to cover her bare body. But she threw it off, letting herself remain naked. Her nudity wasn't for intimacy. It was an act of provocation, humiliation, and anger. He sighed, pulled the sheet over himself instead, and went to sleep. For the past 2 years, this had been his greatest frustration. He'd seen doctors, tried pills, and explored every conceivable solution, but nothing worked. That part of him seemed lifeless, as if it had turned into a stubborn old man who refused to be rushed or pressured, always unbothered by urgency. He wasn't someone who desperately needed sex, but his wife had said, "Once a month isn't too much to ask, is it? If even that's impossible, what's left of a marriage?" Her words were harsh. Marriage isn't just about sex, is it? It's about companionship and building a life together. Plenty of his friends had mentioned that after 40, many people didn't care much about sex anymore. Why did his wife treat it as such a big deal? Maybe it was because his inability made her obsess over it. If that part of him came alive every day, she'd probably beg for it to leave her alone for a year. But whatever the case, it was his fault. 2 weeks later, they tried again. It was still a struggle. Just as he managed enough stiffness to proceed, it faltered after only a few thrusts. This time, she exploded in frustration. Why bother even starting? Before he could respond, she snapped again. From now on, don't touch me. He understood her anger. To be teased only to be let down, it was a cruel kind of disappointment. This wasn't a one-time thing. It had been 2 years, and in those 2 years, her patience had worn thin. He felt ashamed and also a bit resentful. It wasn't as if he didn't want to please her. He simply couldn't. He felt like he was failing her. They sat in silence for a while before he mustered the courage to say, "Maybe you should find someone else?" "Get lost," she said. But this time, instead of leaving herself bare to mock him, she calmly put on her underwear and pajamas, moving with a strange tranquility that wasn't like her. Had his seriousness moved her? Truthfully, he did feel sorry for her. So, he said more earnestly, "As long as I don't know about it, it's fine." She didn't reply. He turned off the bedside lamp and lay in the dark, his mind a storm of thoughts. Would she actually look for someone else? Did she even need a suggestion? Maybe she already had someone, and his words just gave her the green light to stop hiding it. He didn't care to know. His offer wasn't about giving her permission. It was his way of easing the tension. Besides, if she did find someone clean, discreet, and hassle-free, as long as he didn't have to picture it, he could endure it. The next morning, they spoke calmly for a change. She mentioned their son seemed distant from her lately. He reassured her, saying it was just a phase and that she should give him space. They slurped down bowls of noodles at a roadside stall before heading to work. He felt both relieved and melancholy. Would she really find someone? Who would it be? What kind of man? Then again, what right did he have to worry about that? He could only hope she'd exercise caution. Within a week, she began coming home late. The boldness shocked him. Leaving work at 6, she wouldn't return until midnight, dressed to the nines. She'd started wearing eyeliner, colored contact lenses, even false eyelashes. A 40-something woman wearing colored contacts. Though she tried to suppress the flush of post-coital satisfaction, he could see it. Had she found someone that quickly? Or had she already been seeing someone and his words simply let her stop hiding it? He resisted the urge to investigate, saying nothing and asking no questions. He let her do as she pleased. His inner turmoil remained his alone to bear. At least they no longer argued or fought. Their lives settled into a peculiar kind of peace. One day, they were supposed to attend his mother's 70th birthday dinner. He'd forgotten to remind her in the morning, and when she didn't come home that night, he called her, but she didn't pick up. By the time she returned, close to midnight, He confronted her. Today was my mom's 70th birthday. The whole family was there. Why didn't you answer your phone? I was working overtime. You should have reminded me this morning, she said. Why didn't you answer? He pressed. I was busy. How much money do you even make to be this busy? He blurted out. She shot him a glare before heading to the bathroom to remove her makeup and wash up. He expected her to at least ask how the dinner went, but she didn't. She changed into her pajamas and went straight to bed. Anger simmered inside him. He could tolerate her affair, but neglecting her family, acting as if she was the one in the right, was infidelity something to be proud of? Such events started to occur frequently, leaving him astounded by her brazen self-assurance. She went out for rendezvous roughly once a week, and on those nights, her replies were painfully slow. Sometimes it was a Monday, sometimes a Friday. Her schedule was unpredictable, leaving him perpetually anxious. Every day felt like a potential day of her indulgence, and his mind spiraled into obsessive torment. What did she look like when she was with another man? Did she moan breathlessly? Was her face flushed, her body trembling? Surely, the man was satisfying her thoroughly. Otherwise, why would she pursue these meetings so relentlessly? She had once claimed she only needed it once a month, but clearly, this was much more. What started as resignation turned into a nameless fury. He knew he couldn't confront her directly, but he wished she would at least behave meekly at home, as if in silent acknowledgement of her transgressions. Yet, she remained indifferent, coming home late without a word and radiating a rosy glow of satisfaction. When he asked her to take his down jacket to the cleaners because he urgently needed it, she delayed for days, dismissive of his urgency. When he requested that she omit ginger juice while cooking, a preference she was well aware of, she still included it in her dishes because she liked it, even in something as simple as stir-fried greens. Her dominance left him seething. She seemed utterly oblivious to the fact that her current freedom and satisfaction were owed entirely to his tolerance. Her actions mirrored the arrogance of someone perpetually unsatisfied. How could she ignore his grace with such impunity? This rage, born of feeling disrespected, was even more unbearable than his impotence. Friday morning, he informed her that he would be traveling for work. Their child, who attended boarding school, needed to be picked up every Friday evening. His mention of the trip was a reminder for her to take care of it. But that evening, as he arrived at his destination, a text notification buzzed on his phone, a credit card charge from a rideshare app. Judging by the amount, it seemed the child had taken a ride home from school. Their child often hung out with friends during breaks, so he had given the boy access to his credit card for transportation. However, picking him up from school was a parental responsibility. The boy was growing up quickly, and opportunities to bond were fleeting. How could she let him take a rideshare instead of fetching him herself? He called her immediately. Did the child come home on his own? I asked if he could manage, and he said yes without hesitation, she replied. You didn't even bother to pick him up? He can handle it himself, and I was busy. Why should I drive there if he doesn't need me to? You complain about how distant he is, but with this attitude, how can he be close to you? I'm busy working. Do you think your money alone is enough to raise him? I'm juggling so much, and instead of understanding, you just blame me. That's too much. Their argument escalated. Shortly after, she sent him a 15-second video clip. She was indeed at work, her computer screen displaying the current time. Realizing his mistake, he refused to back down. No matter the reason, picking up the child is non-negotiable. Her response was curt. What other reason could there be? The conversation ended abruptly. Their relationship grew, increasingly strained. Previously, their discord had been limited to the bedroom, and he had compensated by making concessions in daily life to maintain some semblance of harmony. But now, even that balance was gone. Without intimacy, without peace at home, their clashes became inevitable. One day, he couldn't find his pair of soft leather shoes. Frustrated, he asked her, "Have you seen my shoes?" She snapped coldly, How would I know where you put them? Am I your maid? That was the last straw. His pent-up anger erupted. You're out there messing around, ignoring the house, neglecting the child. Do you even want to stay married? Shut up. Who am I messing around with? She yelled back. You know damn well what you're doing. Why does it matter to you what I'm doing? She retorted, raising her voice. After a moment, she added, almost mockingly, and wasn't it your idea in the first place? Yes, it was my idea, he said, suppressing his urge to shout. But doesn't that mean you should be grateful? It's your own fault we're in this situation. Do you think I wanted this? Her admission stunned him. A wave of fury and helplessness surged within. You should at least show some gratitude, he said, his voice rising. You're the one at fault, and yet you act so high and mighty. How am I at fault? Didn't you start this by being the one with the problem? You think I enjoy being with someone else? You think I like being the third party? I hate it too. Her words hit him like a blow. She admitted it. She was the third party. And yet, it made sense. At her age, finding a young man who could meet her needs wasn't easy. But why did she have to say it outright? What do you want then? He shouted. What do you want? She screamed back. Go find yourself a prince. Rich, handsome, single, and devoted to only you. Mocking me is fun for you, huh? Didn't you mock me enough before? When did I ever mock you? What did I do to you before or now? This is how it's always been. You started having problems in one area, and now you're having problems in another. You've never been normal. They both fell silent, suddenly aware of the truth. Before, when he couldn't perform, he had made compromises in their life together, and they had achieved a fragile equilibrium. Now, with her involved with someone else, he hoped for her to show gratitude, to humble herself at home. But she felt forced into this situation, resenting her husband even more. Her lover couldn't provide complete happiness, and she still felt her husband owed her something. Gratitude wasn't in the cards. What she wanted was a complete husband, not the constant humiliation of being led by her desires into unsatisfying situations. Their balance was shattered. And now, her words wounded something deeper in him, his pride. Life had become unbearable. She went out less frequently than before, but every day seemed to bring a new argument between them. She disturbed his sleep in the morning with the washing machine. He broke her charger. She thought he was stingy when he balked at the cost of their child's extracurricular classes, calling his earnings insufficient. He got lost while driving because he missed the GPS instructions, resulting in an extra 20 yuan toll, and she ridiculed him for it. Neither of them was willing to back down. Their daily fights escalated into cycles of mutual blame, insults, and humiliation. What kind of life was this? As the weather cooled, she swapped out her thin quilt for a warmer one, but only for herself. She didn't bother with his. He couldn't understand it. If it had been his turn to change the bedding, he'd never just change his own. Was this still a home? At this rate, would she stop changing his pillowcases too? Already upset, he grew angrier later that evening. She went to take a shower while he used the bathroom, and instinctively, she shielded her chest with her arm and yanked the shower curtain shut. They had been married for over a decade, and yet her body felt estranged from him. Unable to hold back, he sneered. Pulling the curtain? Haven't I seen it all before? She retorted coldly. Just finish and leave. Why so chatty? What? Now that you've slept with someone else, I'm not allowed to look anymore? She ripped the curtain open with a sharp motion. Fine, look. Go ahead. What good does it do you? Why are you so defiant? What do I owe you? I've given you my heart, and you still find it disgusting. Blame yourself for being old. Blame yourself for being unattractive. With an abrupt, forceful gesture, she turned off the shower. Still dripping wet, she grabbed a towel, carelessly wiped herself down, and threw it at him. You're a dead man. Damn it. I'm done with this. Who's begging to stay with you? Fine. Divorce. Whoever doesn't divorce is a coward. They walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau and received a divorce appointment slip. For the next month, They lived in separate rooms and didn't speak a single word to each other. He seemed to take pleasure in making loud phone calls, laughing heartily as if the divorce didn't bother him at all. Finally, the cooling-off period ended, and they returned to finalize the paperwork. As the clerk prepared their divorce agreement, he appeared visibly at a loss. Restless, he used his finger to tilt one of the white blinds on the window, muttering absently, "The snow's really coming down." She didn't respond. After completing the procedure, they walked to the door, where it was time to officially part ways. He glanced at her, truly looking at her for the first time in a month. She had changed. The space between her eyes seemed wider, and when their gazes met, her eyes couldn't hold focus, scattering aimlessly. His heart ached. The finality of it all hit him like a brick wall. The dust had settled, and suddenly, he felt an overwhelming urge to speak to her sincerely. With great difficulty, he said, "Honestly, this didn't just happen because of that, or because you were seeing someone else. It's because we mishandled so many things along the way. We didn't start with bad intentions, but we both lost control later. Maybe this kind of situation is just impossible to control. Neither of us should have overestimated ourselves." She remained silent. He added, I hope you take care of yourself." She finally spoke. "Thank you for being generous with the finances. You really are a good person." What else was there to say? They each got into their cars and drove off in separate directions. Their vehicles merged into different streams of traffic, heading toward different parts of the city. How high were the mountains ahead? How deep the rivers? Which was the cause, and which the effect? He drove from one side of the city to the other, from the pale white sky to deep indigo, from the bustling traffic to the still, empty streets, from the hope of returning home to the stark reality of loneliness.